2,000 years ago, looking down from Mount Vesuvius towards the Mediterranean Sea, you would have seen small Roman towns and villas stretching along the coastline and abundantly fertile farmland climbing up the lower slopes. The Romans little expected that they were living next to a volcano, and when it exploded in 79 AD, the entire area was destroyed in the eruption and the towns buried. Today, the excavated ancient towns, Herculaneum and Pompeii, are recognized as World Heritage, but this is only a part of the rich history of the modern town of Ercolano. We hope to show you in this short video how much it has to offer. The modern town of Ercolano is home to 54,000 inhabitants within one of the most densely populated areas of the Italian peninsula. It boasts an extraordinary wealth of cultural and natural resources, of tangible and intangible heritage. The setting of Ercolano is dominated by Vesuvius, which is still an active volcano, although it has not erupted since 1944. It is not only a devastating force, but also a generating one. Despite the catastrophes periodically caused by the volcano, people have continued living here, attracted by the beautiful landscape, the mild climate, and the incredible fertility of land. In antiquity, the area was renowned for its flourishing agriculture and multiple harvests a year. Today, the area is important for growing some agricultural products that are local varieties that can be found only here. The most relevant productions include tomatoes, apricots, and wine. In addition, there is a large business for growing cut flowers. This volcanic landscape, with its natural and cultural riches, has been a source of artistic inspiration for visitors throughout history. It was an obligatory stop on Grand Tour in the 18th century and continued to inspire artists throughout the 20th century and beyond. Vesuvius is also where volcanological science was born. The first volcanological observatory was built here in 1841. But Herculaneum is not just about the land, it is also about the sea. It enjoys a central position on the Bay of Naples, which in ancient times was at the heart of the Mediterranean trade. And in fact, Roman Herculaneum was known as a safe harbor in all seasons and had an active fishing fleet. However, this access to the sea was cut off in 1839, when the king ordered the construction of the first Italian railway along the shoreline. As a result, for much of the last 2 centuries, the shore has become periphery, and it ended up being used for activities that needed to be outside town due to their unhealthy nature. Even though the situation has changed today, the sea is still difficult to access, despite being widely recognized as a potential resource for the enjoyment and well-being of residents, as well as for stimulating economic growth. As well as these natural resources, this is an area rich in culture. Best known is the Archaeological Park of Herculaneum, which is part of a serial World Heritage property together with Pompeii and the Roman villas at Oplontis. It is the 3rd most visited archaeological site in Italy. It's an outstanding example of very well preserved Roman town, which provides a vivid example of the daily life of 2,000 years ago. While Pompeii is just famous for its sheer size of Roman city that has been excavated, Herculaneum offers insights into the details of ancient life. The way the town was completely covered by volcanic material has preserved it in a unique way, allowing the conservation of buildings up to 3 stories high, as well as organic materials from wood, furniture, food, and even human remains. Official explorations of the ancient town began in 1738, thus beginning the start of modern archaeology in Europe. However, it had been known long before that Roman statues and marbles could be discovered in the area, and when this came to the king's attention in the early 18th century, he ordered the start of explorations through a series of underground tunnels. Wall paintings, mosaics, and other finds were taken to the nearby royal palace in Portici. Royal courtiers soon followed the king, and in just 50 years, leading members of the Neapolitan aristocracy had commissioned to the best architects of the time their luxury villas along the coastal road that led from the royal palace. On account of this trend, over time this road became known as the Golden Mile, and there are over 122 historic houses, 22 of which lie on the stretch of road that runs past Herculaneum. The sheer number of large historic buildings means that some are currently in use. For example, as university, residencies, hotels, but the resources to care for all of them are difficult to find, and not all are well maintained. However, this large cultural landscape in its particular geological setting has been inscribed, both the Golden Mile area together with Mount Vesuvius, as a UNESCO map biosphere. Moving into the historic heart of modern town, which grew out of the medieval settlement, there is a thriving market selling vintage clothes in Via Pugliano. This continues to be an important economic activity for the town, as well as part of its history and traditions. During the Allied occupation in World War II, in a town devastated by bombs, hunger, and eruptions, the local community transformed goods from the US Army into a source of income, establishing long-term links to the US after the war. They managed to create what became at one point one of the largest second-hand markets in the world. In the 1960s, it is estimated that it provided over 4,000 jobs and had 180,000 tons of clothes arriving from the US, Germany, and the UK. Every year. Today, the market is not as important as it was once. The employment rate and the income generated are currently much lower than they used to be. Unfortunately, the decline of the market is strongly linked to the decline of Herculano in general at the end of the 20th century. In the 1980s and 1990s, Herculano was strongly controlled by mafia, and it was one of the principal drug centers in Italy. The war between organized crime groups was fierce, and the town became dangerous. In 2007, there was a turning point when both the criminal justice system and the local community worked together to change the situation. During the reset operation that year, 60 people related to organized crime were arrested, and in 2010, another 200 people more were arrested. The judicial process has had much greater impact thanks to a parallel, coordinated movement of local residents. Many local business owners stood up to the criminal and stopped paying them protection money, while local community groups publicly spoke out against them for the very first time, with public demonstrations held to encourage people to choose a new future for the town. Thanks to this collective action, Herculano is going through a regeneration process and has become a model for other towns affected by organized crime. There is a new generation who are finding creative opportunities to define a more positive future for their town, from a local radio station to school projects to a cooperative at the market. While the darkest period of Herculano's history is over, it remains a very vulnerable social context. According to the last census of the Italian Institute of National Statistics, more than 1 in every 10 families lives in poverty, with children growing up in families where no one has a job. More than 1 in 4 students don't manage to finish high school. Nearly half of all young people are unemployed. The data on women shows that they are even in a more precarious position. Only 15% of women have a job. It is likely that the crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic is only increasing these inequalities. Herculano then is a place of great contrasts, enjoys enormous natural and cultural wealth, while at the same time suffering from a huge social and economic disadvantages. It is in this context that the heritage institutions and practitioners are called to play their part in contributing towards a more inclusive and sustainable development of the area. We will look at these issues more in depth in the following videos.